Good evening and welcome back to Church Unplugged with Shield of Faith. We are so excited and blessed that you are joining us this evening for our next episode and our next discussion. Before we get started tonight, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our two speakers. We have the giggles tonight.
Oh my God, this is the best ever.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Carla Salazar, who is our amazing and very enthusiastic children's pastor, as well as she has her master's in guidance and counseling and is an elementary school counselor. And joining her tonight, we have our incredible lead pastor, Mr. Frank McElhaney. We are looking forward to everything that they have to say tonight. As always, my name is Jade Ruggarello, and I will be your unseen host for this evening. Don't forget to comment any questions that you have. We love hearing from you guys, and we will do our best to address any comments that we receive. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. How are you guys tonight?
Hi, y'all. I like when Pastor gets the giggles. That's the best ever.
Man, that hadn't happened in a long time.
The best.
Well, a merry heart does good medicine,
But
right?
that's just too quick a conversation switch for me.
I like it. And y'all got the memo? You both have orange on tonight?
Yes.
I like it. Just have
Work
a-
outfits.
Well, I'm super excited for tonight's discussion. So, for those of you who may not be aware, May is National Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
And so we are actually going to be focusing our episodes and our discussions for this month on mental health. We actually had a little bit of a mental health series back at the beginning of this year. Some of you may have been around to see that. That's kind of how we introduced this entire concept of Church Unplugged. So I just want to start off tonight by asking either of you if you would mind just giving a recap on, or a brief recap on, why we want to talk about mental health, what we're going to be talking about tonight before we jump into any of our questions.
Ted, you're it. I'm just kidding. We talked about, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. But one of the things that Jade and I talked about is I really felt within me about supporting people with their mental health.
Right.
Because it's hard to know what to do, what to say, where to go, how to be when someone is dealing with things when it comes to mental health. I think people feel like a little touchy, like they don't want to say the wrong thing, you know? And so that's what I want to encourage is, it's okay that people aren't okay, and then it's okay to support them. And we've talked about anxiety, we've talked about depression, we've talked about
Grief. I mean, there's a wide range, right?
Yes, we have. And so that's kind of where I was, wanting to go with it is, supporting people in their mental health, because it's it's hard to know what to do.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to add on to that, Pastor?
No, I just think that a lot of times we have people that have anxiety for a little while and then that goes away. That's cool. It's when it doesn't go away that we need to start having some tools to deal with it. Same thing with discouragement. It's okay to have a bad day or two, but then if it just keeps hanging on, you need to have some tools to help you deal with that. Some things, so a lot of times people, one of the problems we have is very simply we just let things go on too long. And
Or
part of
like
that,
live
That's
in
very true.
denial. Like let's not, if I don't think about it, it's going to go away. That's not true.
Yeah.
It'll crop
Yes.
up somewhere.
Right.
that is that's a real thing. People say it'll go away.
Yeah.
And that's okay to believe that, like I said, for a day or two. After that, you probably should be looking at getting some help of some kind.
So I do have to say this because I know that there's every personality or every person deals with things differently, but something that I really have to do is I have to talk about everything to the Lord, pray about it. I tend to have a pretty happy disposition, but I generally will make sure I run and pray or walk and pray or just go to my closet and pray and kind of share everything with the Lord in addition to coping skills. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, the Lord is my first resource.
Yes.
Anyway, for any kind of healing, and then I think one of the things that people won't expect pastor talking about is seeking help with mental health issues.
Yeah.
Because, historically, a lot of times pastors will, there's really been a stigma attached to mental health issues
Agreed.
that
Absolutely.
I would like to see go away.
Yes.
I would too.
Absolutely.
Because people, Christian people, tend to avoid more seeking help because they feel like that's something that is a faith issue,
Right.
as opposed to a physical or mental issue.
Well, and feeling that judgment, like one of the things I talk to people about is just like, there's sometimes where mental health issues are like being a diabetic, where that's something that you're going to struggle with forever. And then sometimes it's like, having a condition that can be fixed and then it's over with.
Right.
And both are okay. Like, it's a matter
It
of
doesn't make
making
one worse or better than the other.
Yes, like,
right.
but it is very much like a physical health issue. And one thing I do have to say is our health, like, and this is my soapbox. Our health care needs to do better with mental health because the things that are asked of people when they're dealing with mental health stuff, I feel like is not. It's not okay. Like, I've talked friends through their children going into hospitalization, and I've had to like prep. I keep texting and texting and praying because I know the process, and in knowing the process, it's not the same as putting your child in the hospital for like a heart condition.
No.
And it's like, y'all, we need to do better.
Well, they're geared. Understand that hospitals and doctors and insurance companies are in this as a job.
It's a hot mess. I hate it.
It is a job. It's a profession. It's a way that they make money.
Yes.
So some of the questions that they ask you are just generally geared to keep themselves out of trouble.
Yeah.
So what I would like to see is, and actually, my primary care doctor is like this. He'll sit down and start talking to me and ask me questions. I went to him for 2 years before I figured out he was checking me out. Trying to see that I was okay.
Yes, okay.
And so, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, because it wasn't on no paper or anything. I had to do the paper ones too, but those were geared to be sure I wasn't going to hurt myself.
Yes.
Right.
So, but that kind of discussion, I think, is more appropriate than, so if you can find out where people are coming from, because people are really good at protecting themselves or trying to hide themselves, and they can do it for, say, 30 minutes as a doctor's visit, or
You're right.
if they have to sit in your office.
Yes.
If you don't let them sit there for an extra minute or two, and then all of a sudden, you can't hold it back any longer.
Yes, it's true.
Because when you're afraid, or when you're anxious, or even if you're depressed, you can push that a little bit for a while, but that burden comes back, and so helping people, I think one of the greatest things for us we can do is have this discussion and let people know that for me, being treated for a mental health issue is no different than being treated for the flu.
That's true.
Or,
It's very true.
Getting a vaccination, anything like that. So if it can help you, then you need to follow that method. That doesn't mean you put your faith aside.
Right.
If you add your faith to that, you'd be
Right.
surprised how much quicker that can help you.
Well, and I believe that the Lord is raising up mental health people in the mental health field to advocate and to be there and to pray. Like, I am so, that prayer is a weapon. Therapy is a tool, but prayer is a weapon.
That's right.
And one of my favorite counselors that is, I follow her on Instagram. Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose her name. Anita Phillips. She is a licensed professional counselor, and she is also a pastor's wife. And that's what she said. Like, prayer is a weapon. Prayer prayer is a weapon, therapy is a tool. And I absolutely agree with her on that. It is super important that you do get help if you need it. And to like rally around your people, because somebody has either gotten help before, or where it's like, is this normal? I mean, like, that's how I live my life, is I'm like, Tanya, is this normal? Mom, is this normal? Amanda, is this normal? Like, my people in my life, like, I'll call and be like, is this normal? And so, like, call your people, and especially ones that you know have mental health backgrounds, and go, is this normal? Because I will tell people all the time, shopping for a counselor is like shopping for shoes. Sometimes you don't like them, and that is okay. You know, like, that is so okay.
Right, right. Well, so it looks like we have a couple people tuning in. Brother Lewis, Sister Gail, how are you guys? Janet Johnson is tuning in, and she said,
Janet.
I am on that soapbox as well, Carla.
Amen,
So-
sister. High five.
It's so great to have you guys with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And so, Carla, I liked what you said, and we even talked about this in some of our previous episodes. Mental health is it's a wide spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just depression. It's not just anxiety. I mean, it can go from anything from ADHD, there's disorders, there's eating disorders, psychotic disorders, you know,
Yeah.
there's such a wide range of things that people struggle with and go through. And one thing that you mentioned that I actually want to have you elaborate on is the connection between mental and physical health. And I actually want to say something that you've actually said before, and I just think it's so good. And it is, when you don't open up about what you are going through or seek support for that, your body keeps the score.
Yes.
So would you
There's
mind
a
elaborating
book.
on that?
There's a
Yes.
book called The Body Keeps the Score. And I absolutely agree. Like, your body keeps the score of the traumas and the stress, especially when you live in the sea of denial. You know, like, your body, it's going to come somewhere, whether it's high blood pressure or sugar, or even like a true, like a panic attack. Like, you know, all of a sudden I have friends that have had panic attacks, and they're like, I don't know what happened. And I'm like, whoa, let's back it up a little bit, you know, like, because they're not wanting to deal with some of the things that are going on in their life, but their body decided to deal with it for them. And so then we talk about that. What do you think about that?
You know, that's real true. I really hadn't thought about it doing like that, but that's a real true. It's you know, I just know that I've had to deal with several things in my life: depression, anxiety, things that I'm talking about, not just for a day or two, but long term.
A long time, yeah.
And so
And grief.
they be in grief, and they to me, they're like a weight on you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you could just put it down, you'd be okay. So I've never.
Rick's amening you over there.
Yeah,
he's like, yeah.
You know, he knows what I'm talking about. But it's like, if it's not, it's like, if you just put it down, where you could get a breather, it's okay. And so over the years, there's just been a whole lot of times that I've had to face different things. They will make you where you can't really function on the job because you don't get the right amount of sleep or rest. Even if you're asleep and you're anxious, you're still not really sleeping.
Yeah.
If you're depressed, you can sleep and sleep and sleep, but it never gets to be enough. And I mean, so there's a lot of things that grief affects people differently in different ways, to where there's just so, you know, you think you're all good, and then all of a sudden a song can come on the radio, or see a car that's a different color or something, and then all of a sudden you're back where you started.
Where
it
you
seems
started
like.
from, yes.
So I always encourage people, a lot of times when I get to talk to people, most of them come to me because they want me to pray for them so they can get better. And I do that. But I also recognize that I am not a doctor. But a lot of times symptoms give us an idea when people need help. So what I always try to do is point people to somebody that can help them. And many times that as a doctor.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes a medical doctor, sometimes a psychiatrist or psychologist. It just depends on what the level of they're dealing with. I'm not at all afraid to tell somebody, you really need to see someone that can help you.
Yeah.
I'm going to pray for them, and sometimes it helps. But, and you can call it faith, lack of faith, whatever you want to. But that help that comes from the prayer is good while you're still there praying with someone. But when they go back outside, it's just like us from going into this light right here. You and I can talk, but it's dark right out there.
Right.
And so once you go, you close yourself in again. When you pray, you're open to let God's Spirit flow through you. And we need to realize that I've actually seen God heal someone from depression. They were in the hospital for depression.
Wow.
And they were allowed to come to church, came up for prayer, and just a long story short, very few days later they were released. But God did that there in the service, and that's not out of the ballpark at all.
Yes.
But we still need to realize that there are a whole lot of people, and I even have people. Being a pastor is an interesting thing. I even have people talk to me like I'm a doctor.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm a pastor, so I'm supposed to know how to fix stuff.
Everything, yes.
So I still have the opportunity to share. Well, what you need to do is you need to see someone.
Yes.
And if I know someone that I trust, I usually have 2 or 3 people that I can say, look, you need to call these people here.
Yes.
And so, like veterans and things like that, where there's people that want to help.
Yeah.
So I just think that people today, I mean, let's face it, a lot of these things we're facing are really prevalent in our time.
Yes. No,
in
it's
years
true.
before, you didn't have to deal with all this. I know they say, well, you just don't know, you weren't there, but the lifestyle was so much different than it is now.
Yeah, I agree.
The lifestyle we have to live is conducive to anxiety, depression, discouragement. I've known several people that tried to find a job for over a year. That's discouraging.
That is very discouraging.
It will mess with you. And so then that's where we need, I know I'm talking longer than I should.
No, I like it.
No, you're
like
totally
it.
fine.
But that's where,
Amen.
But that's where we, the church, comes in, because we are supposed to be a support. And that doesn't mean we can solve every problem, but it means we can care for every problem.
No, absolutely.
And we can, a lot of times, just having someone to talk to. I've noticed even here, somebody comes in from outside, they're real timid, but they find somebody that says hi to them, so they sit with them, and they sit with them, and so they just build a relationship.
Bond, yes.
And that's what we need to do with people, whether they're hurting or not. But hurting people those are the people. Actually, that's the ministry God gave me, was to minister to hurting people. So whatever we can do, which includes, say, being bold enough to say, look, you need to talk to somebody.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Well, and people are skittish or scared about taking medication or going to the doctor for the mental health part, but are on, medicine for being a diabetic or, medicine for high blood pressure, but it's the same. Like it's the same all the way around, right? Like, and finding the right one that works for your body is huge. So
it's
yes.
different.
Yeah,
it's
and it's different for different people.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And getting a second opinion, all those things, it's the same in the mental health world. my kids, it was interesting. You were talking about the checklist. My kids, I took them to Well Check. I think it's been in the last 3 or 4 years, probably 4 or 5 years, where they'll do like a mental health assessment on them. And I tell them thank you like a million. I'm like, thank you for doing this. And they probably think I'm a wackadoodle, but I tell them thank you because I'm sure they feel awkward asking mental health questions to children. And that's not their norm. It's my norm, but that's not their norm. But I'm glad that they do it because, you know, even though I check in with my children's mental health, I don't know if every parent does.
Right.
And so I think that that's cool that the doctor's office does do that. I think that's a smart choice on their part.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, as both of you alluded to, I think it's important to understand that connection between mental and physical health because then you can start to be aware, I guess, of the symptoms if, you know, someone you love or someone you care about may start exhibiting some. And that's kind of a just a warning sign to them to maybe be alert and kind of transitioning now into, you know, being a support system for somebody who's struggling. I can speak from experience. I think sometimes when someone you love is experiencing or struggling with their mental health, you can feel like you're in a really helpless position.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
I can attest to that. And so I just wanted to ask, what would your advice be, or what would you say would be some ways that they can support someone they love that may be struggling?
I think for sure listening to that voice, the Spirit of God, and listening to that voice to text or to call or to go over or whatever it might be, even when you feel like you're invading their space, just do it, because I do believe that the Lord gives us those, you know, cues. I honestly do feel like learning techniques like grounding, where it's like if you have a person in your life that deals with panic attacks or anxiety that needs to be grounded, meaning like 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch, you know, 2 things that you can smell, 1 thing that you can taste. Like, and having that on I had a friend tell me one time that her daughter suffered from severe anxiety attacks, and she would just hold her and tell me 5 things you can see right now. Like, and so she had that ready so that when the panic started, she could have that as the go-to. So already starting to learn, I feel like it's important, and I'm a huge advocate of learn your coping tools. Like learn and have your people know your coping tools, right? Like Rick legit will look at me and go run. Like, and I'd be like, okay, or he'll go, can I get you some coffee? If I can't complete a sentence, because ADHD is a dysfunctional behavior, and I will like go into the room and say like 2 words and then like leave, and then come back and say 2 more words and then like leave, and I'm like all over the place, and he'll look at me and go, I'm brewing you some coffee, and I'm like, thank you, because I can't even, that day is so rough in my brain. And it's not necessarily that I'm having bad thoughts. My body and my brain do 2 different things, right? And so my body needs to be go, 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 and my brain can't keep up with my body. And so bring me some coffee, and caffeine usually gets me focused or whatever. And so those kind of things, when you have people that do those kind of things with you, I think that is important. Also, I wanted to kind of share this too. When I dealt with postpartum depression, which it sounds weird that it was postpartum depression, but I actually had racing thoughts and I couldn't get them out of my head. It was like a movie that just would not stop. So I had to learn what things would stop the cycle of insanity in my brain. And I still use those if my brain were to start racing again. And it's super weird when your brain races. Like, it's different, like, because it's not like you thinking about all those thoughts. It's like flashes of pictures. And I'm like, like, please make it stop. And so that I definitely I've learned what works for me to get out of my own head so that I can, and grounding and mindfulness works for me, which is like actually listening to mindful listening, like stopping and freezing, because I never stop and freeze for anything, and just stopping to hear, like, oh, like right now I hear a motorcycle, like in my brain for whatever reason, like totally stops, like, and I'm just focusing on the sound. So having some of those tools that work for you, I know I sound like a cuckoo bear, but those are things that sometimes can help. And standing beside that person, knowing their coping tools sometimes help so that, because they may not be able to get themselves out of that place. What do you think? Yes?
Well, I was listening to you talk, and a lot of that happens. One of the things that, one of the things doctors do is they'll give medication. And none of the medication that I'm familiar with gives instantaneous relief. So I think that a lot of times people finally go to a doctor and then they try it for a couple of days and it doesn't give them relief, and they drop off. And we need to encourage people not to do it, because sometimes it takes a couple of 3 weeks for things to help.
That's true.
I was always very reluctant to take any kind of medication because of my past. The stuff I used to take wasn't medication, but
and then Jesus came on the scene.
And then Jesus came on. And when
thank the Lord for it.
When I got saved, well, after that, I did not want to take medication unless they explained to me. Even just recently, when I had surgery, the nurse was talking to me about they're going to give me this, and I said I'm not going to take it. They said,
now pass.
I'm not going to take it, And I finally just said, look, anything with co in it, I'm not taking. And
hashtag samesies.
And so,
just saying, I like that happy gas a little too much sometimes.
So, but well, well, the happy gas. Listen, let me tell you. I told them I didn't want it, and then after the procedure started, I said, "Can I have the gas?" They said, "Too late." But the thing is a lot of times medication really can help.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that you have to have medication every time you have an issue.
Right.
But sometimes, like the tools that you've been talking about, I'm going to be honest with you, you're the only one I've ever heard that from. So you understand how that's a select, that's a pretty select group of people.
You're right, it is.
The people you're around can hear that, but there's a whole lot of other people that need to hear that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And I think that along with being aware of things, we need to have a strategy to get those tools to people to where they can really help. And and that's a huge blessing that a lot of people are in this alone. Even some of the people that are probably watching online, you're pretty much trying to do life alone.
Yeah.
And that's tough on its own.
Yeah.
So I'm saying reach out to people around you. Reach out to us. I mean,
yes.
We can talk back with you. We can do things, but I know it's hard to feel alone. I know it's hard to feel, even with people around you and you feel alone. That's a terrible thing to feel. Like.
Absolutely.
Anxiety is rough. Depression is tough, and I'm going to say this, and it may be sound, but I think the devil wants people to be depressed, discouraged, anxious,
and feel like they're fearful, the only ones that feel that way,
and feel like so they don't talk to other people.
I agree with you,
and
100%.
When you start talking to other people and you say, "Oh, that's what I think too. I feel like that," so then all of a sudden that weight begins to lift off of you, because the devil wants to keep us pressed down. The Lord wants us to be free.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that what's in you is, and I don't know what everybody's went through. I can only speak to what I've gone through and what I've seen others of you go through. And I'm just saying, it's easier to go through it with Jesus than it is to go through it by yourself.
Amen.
Amen. And I actually want to say we have a couple of comments and questions. Janet said, everything starts in the mind, including disease, so our mental health is more crucial than most of us are aware of.
That is right.
It's an interesting statement.
And then, Carla, your mom actually said, how do you help a child that is getting bullied at school and feels bad about themselves?
I I actually wanted to hear Pastor say something because sometimes he'll say something that makes me giggle. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'll say. What would he say? I'll come and take care of him. Yeah, that's what I was hearing in my head too. I think really and truly, like, it stinks being a kid sometimes, right? Like, I'm not gonna lie, and being honest with your kids about it stinking sometimes, and that people can be mean is true, but it's important, right? One of the things, but it's hard because it depends on the age. Some of my older kids, I can say what they say to you says more about them than it does about you, because I can hear people, and when I hear what they say about other people, I'm like, ooh, you know, like, they don't look pretty to me, or they don't look handsome to me, or they don't look like a cool person, or, you know, my favorite's the compliment, when they compliment you but they put someone else down, and you're like, hold up, I don't like that either. You know, like, why would you have to put somebody else down to say something nice to me, right? But really helping a kid, I personally don't have all the answers. I wish I did. I wish there were manuals for kids. But I feel like building up a child, because they are here for such a time as this, right? Like, they're here on this planet, and they have all these amazing things about them. And it's okay to have, I actually think it's okay to have things about me that are not perfect. And I laugh at those things because that's part of being human, right? And so being okay with not being perfect sometimes is good too. Tag your it, but also lifting them up and telling them how amazing they are.
It's a real big burden to be perfect. So
yes.
I don't try to be. I'm going to say this. The thing about children, young children today, and even young adults today, I know people say a lot of things, but I'm going to say this. These young people want to make a difference. So they do mean something. And always encourage your child in how much they mean. Instill in them their value, because these children are going to help the world that we live in. And there's always been bullies, and I can't tell you how we used to handle bullies because it's against the law today. But
there's Pastor.
but it is if and one of the things that I encourage is help build strength in your child.
Yes.
And think of a couple of things. Number one, you may not always be there to protect your child, even though you want to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Give them tools that they can survive in this world. So part of a parent's job, and I'm gonna say this, I may say it twice because it's important for people to understand. The parent's job is not to be friends with their kids. The parent's job is not to make life easy on their children. The parent's job is to give their child the tools so they can survive if they decide on their own or in a family, you know, together. That doesn't mean they have to be on their own. It doesn't mean, but they'll have the tools to where they can cope with the things that happen in this life.
Right.
So I suggest that you help your children have those coping skills, and don't be afraid to, I know a lot of people are afraid to enlist the help of authorities. Don't be afraid to do that. In this day and age,
That's a good point.
don't be afraid to do that. Take this but you have to consider, you know, and I'm trying to be short with this, but there's a whole lot to consider when your child's being bullied. And I just be honest with you, there's not much that makes me more upset than a child bullying somebody, or even adults bullying other adults. I just, I can handle that a whole different way.
Right.
But it just help them to have skills to cope in this world and to be happy.
Right.
You know, these children are important. I can't overemphasize to everyone that's listening how important the children, these young children that are going to school now, how important they are. to not only our country, but the world becoming a better place to live
Yeah.
than it was when I was growing up. I mean, these kids want to make a difference. And, you know, we've had the generation that all they want to do is make money, so they've made most of their money now, so they've got kids that want to make a difference. So we want to make a difference.
Well, and I think I like that you said, you know, enlisting the help of the adults. I don't ever play the bad guy, but I definitely take responsibility on myself to make sure that kids are nice to each other. So when I get wind of it, I take care of it, you know, and I do it very counselor-esque, but I do take care of it and make sure that kids know that they can come to me sometimes if they're having a hard time, sometimes it's important to ask your adults around you for help, and we can be sneaky and not say who said, you know, like to even handle the problem. So I think that's another thing too. If it keeps happening, you got to tell somebody, because the adults are there to advocate. I don't know how many times kids have been in my office and they are like done, and a lot of times we didn't know anything about what was going on. And if I would have known from the beginning, I would have stopped it from the beginning. So definitely, you know, finding their adults to advocate for them at school, because they don't deserve to be belittled in any way, shape, or form.
And always support your child. I mean, open lines of communication, talk to them, what they like to do, share with them. If a child has someone to talk to and communicate with that they trust, they're going to be safer than if they just won't share with anyone. So I just encourage, you know, I never was the best at communicating with my children, but I've grown better in the last years, but it'll really help if that child knows that they are not doing this alone.
Right. Absolutely. And before we close tonight, I just want to piggyback right off of that, Pastor, and also off of what Pastor Carla was saying. And that is, if you are listening tonight, we want you to know that you are here for such a time as this as well. You matter, you are loved, and we are so incredibly thankful that you joined us for this discussion. Do you guys have any last words before we say goodnight?
Nope. I think I'm good.
You're good?
I'm
You
good.
sure?
I'm good.
That's
Go team.
sounds very unusual. All right.
As always, we are so incredibly blessed that you joined us this evening. Don't forget to like us here on Facebook and follow us over on our Instagram page. Those are two great platforms to stay up to date with what's happening here at Shield of Faith. We hope that you can join us next Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. for our next discussion. We thank you so much once again, and we pray that you all have a very blessed rest of your week and a very happy Mother's Day. Good night, everyone.
Bye, y'all.
Good night. God bless.